Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Decision Hour. I am your host, Adam Bird, and let me tell you something, folks. I got a hot one for you today. If you are a business owner, if you're in a management position, if you're in any type of leadership position at all, we're gonna talk about what can military conflict kind of teach us about leadership and business leadership. So I want everybody to take a second, grab a pen, unless you're driving. Be safe. And you're going to want to take some notes, because the guest that I have for you today, to say that he's an expert in this is simply an understatement. He's a West Point grad. He's a founder of Strategic Leaders Academy. He's a very recognized and respected combat leader. He defined conventional wisdom in Afghanistan by motivating large insurgent groups to switch sides. And it's the only example of such a success in the 20-year history of the war. He's a trusted advisor to 3 4-star generals and 2 undersecretaries of defense. He's the first American to have both fought the Taliban as a commander in combat and then to sit down and negotiate with them during peace talks. He holds a Ph.D. in war studies from King's College in London. He's the author of Zero Sum Victory, What We're Getting Wrong About War, and Leadership, the Warrior's Art. Folks, I'm talking about retired Colonel Christopher Kolenda. Did I say that right, sir?
You got it.
All right.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. That was a very kind intro.
Welcome to the show, sir. I'm honored to have you here.
Hey, it's an honor to be here.
Let's start off by, telling our listeners a little bit more about yourself.
Well, I was born and raised in Omaha. I know you got a son at Creighton University,
yeah.
So and then I was fortunate. I got accepted to West Point, and I decided that I should go there, because if I don't go, I'll always wonder what it was like if I, and so I went and went into the Army with an open mind, and spent 24 and a half years there. And you mentioned, I led a task force of about 800 paratroopers in Eastern Afghanistan in 2007 and 2008. And you mentioned that we had managed to motivate a large insurgent group and several smaller ones to stop fighting and switch sides. They fought the Taliban to the very end. We also lost 6 paratroopers there in my unit. Chris Pfeiffer, Adrian Hike, Jacob Lowell, Ryan Fritchie, Dave Boris, and Tom Bostic. So that was amazing. Amazing things that our paratroopers did. Also just a very tough cost, heartbreaking cost. And then I was, asked to help the Obama administration write a new strategy for Afghanistan. And then I was, senior advisor to McChrystal Petraeus Dunford. And I resigned or retired from the Army in 2011, so I could be the Secretary of Defense's representative in the talks we had with the Taliban in 2011, 2012. So, and then I resigned from the government, beating my head against the wall for 2.5 years. Said, I'm gonna go into the private sector. So I started my own business, and I help leaders get more awesome. I help leaders get better, and help them inspire people to contribute their best to their team's success.
Sir, what do you think the biggest hiccup is for leaders out there today? What's the number one thing that you have seen across the board that leaders are missing? They're missing the target on something. What's that one thing?
Yeah, well, it's a lot. I think, as Tolstoy said, happy families are happy in the same ways, and unhappy ones are unhappy in their own ways. So you get a lot of that. In leadership. I think one of the biggest challenges is, and there's been some negative examples in recent years, that for too many, leadership and getting in a position of leadership is more about them the money, the power, being able to order people around, than it is about serving. And the central leadership challenge is, how do you inspire people to contribute their best to your team's success?
Right.
And the leaders who are focused on that, they see leadership as an opportunity to serve people, to help them be the best version of themselves, to help their organizations thrive and grow, are the ones that tend to do well. And then we're talking about change on the margins, to help them be even better. The ones who, it's all about them and power and privilege, I don't work with those folks. And they're just going to drag their organization down.
They'll end up weeding themselves out, hopefully, eventually, right? Or if they're business owners, God forbid, if they don't see that, my guess is that they're probably not going to be in business very long.
Yeah, and just the number of sort of shattered lives along the way is heartbreaking to me. So, to the extent that that I can help people, give them ways to inspire people to contribute their best, I feel good about that.
I love it. Sir, there's a question here I want to ask you, and you think about leadership, and then you think about history, all the great leaders in history, and you think of like the Greeks, the Romans, and some of the modern wartime leaders. What can we learn about what they've done about leadership, and how can we implement that today effectively?
Yeah, there are three ways when you want to learn about leadership. You got to do it from three perspectives: theory, history, and experience. So theory is about the sort of big ideas about leadership. What is it? What's leadership philosophy? What does it mean? Ancient Greeks and Romans are great about that because they're dealing with this stuff, and as they're trying to figure out, how do you balance order and freedom? How do you create a society in which people obey laws and they still have the freedom to be themselves? I mean, we wrestle with the same stuff today.
Absolutely.
Second is history. We look at our challenges today: pandemics, wars, political frictions, polarization. And then you look at what Alexander the Great dealt with. Yeah. He's dealing with the same stuff. So history gives you perspective that, these times are not necessarily unprecedented. It's not that history repeats itself, but it rhymes, and we can learn from that. And then the third is experience. You got to be in the arena, and you've got to talk with other people in the arena, and because you got to practice. You can't just, nobody ever learned to be a great leader simply by reading a book or going to a workshop.
Right.
So you got to have all three of those. If you have, if you have theory and history and you got no experience, then you're existing in the ivory tower where, you might as well make breakfast with a chocolate frying pan, not going to work. Second, if you've got,
I'm writing that down.
If you've got, theory and experience, but you've got no history, then you're going to lack perspective, and you're going to fall victim to all these different fads. So in the 90s, you had things like the 1 minute manager, management by walking around. I mean, we scratch our heads. It's like, really? That was a thing? It's like, yeah, there was a thing. And then it wasn't a thing. And then if you have history and experience, but you don't have the big ideas, then you're like the person who's playing chess one move at a time. You're all tactics and no strategy, and you're going to get beat by anybody who knows the Queen's Gambit, right, for instance.
Right.
So having all three of those is vital. And in fact, I wrote Leadership: The Warrior's Art. It's got 3 sections which model those 3 perspectives.
And folks, and I'm glad you brought that up, sir. If you're listening to this right now, you're already online. So open up another browser and go to strategicleadersacademy.com. You can find both books and order both books from his website there, and check that out. And we'll get more into that here in just a bit. You said something here a second ago, sir, and I kind of want to go back to it. you're talking about history and having the three principles for leadership. Do you think history was a big thing? And I agree with you wholeheartedly. We need to learn from history. Like you said, history doesn't necessarily repeat itself. Does it change? And I know that's kind of a loaded question in a sense of, no, of course it's already happened. You can't go to the past. But I feel like in today's society, some things are being shown like, well, this is what happened in history. And if we don't learn from it, it could repeat itself, or something, God forbid, is worse could happen. Do you see leaders today really learning from our history?
Some do, and they benefit from it because they get perspective. They don't panic when something bad happens,
right?
And they say, you know what, people have dealt with this kind of stuff before, so let's see what principles worked for them and how do we apply this to our context. So I think history doesn't necessarily repeat itself, but it rhymes,
right?
And so what principles did they do? How did they behave? And what worked for them? What didn't work for them? What can we take from that and apply today? Yeah. That's what's so important. And then the neat thing about military history and political, about history in general,
right,
is we got the written records. I mean, we know,
right,
what people said, what people did,
right, and
we also know the effects. So I know history is very complicated and there are many points of view. But we know these things and we know the aftermath. And so that is our best leadership laboratory. I
love that. And I want to stick kind of like the military side of this here for just a minute. When it comes to what are some of the decision-making errors that keep leading America into, I'm gonna say, conflicts?
Well, I wrote this book, Zero Sum Victory: What We're Getting Wrong About War, which tackles that very question. And what I wanted to look at, and this was something as I went through the wars in Afghanistan from all those different perspectives, I had the chance to go to King's College in London, and they said, we want to bring a practitioner on the faculty. If you come, we'll waive the tuition on a Ph.D. Like, all right, because I jumped at that chance.
Yeah, that's
not only because I love teaching.
Right.
Yeah, and going to London. But it also allowed me to, try to make sense of, why is it that the world's most powerful country with the world's most capable military keeps getting into these quagmires. Yeah. Can't seem to beat these ragtag militant groups, whether it's the Viet Cong or Iraqi insurgents or the Taliban. What is it? What's going on here? And when we look at our track record since Vietnam, it ain't great. We've had kind of one fiasco after another. And so I wanted to look at what are the common mistakes, the unforced errors that we make ourselves, strategy and policy wise, and what can we learn from it? Our troops do what we ask them to do, what leaders ask them to do. Right. And they do it to a very, very high standard. As leaders, and I'm talking at the policy strategy level, we're often not asking them to do the right things. And of course, they can't succeed alone.
Right.
So in these kind of insurgencies, whether it's Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan, it turns on this question of political legitimacy of the host nation government. And you can't outsource legitimacy. We can't legitimize. I used to hear this term all the time. We've got to legitimize the Afghan government. We can't do that. Right. They have to earn it.
Right.
And I think this is where another place where military history and leadership in the business intersect. The Afghan government, for instance, and the Iraqi government and the South Vietnamese government, they never bothered to gain the buy-in of their people. They exploited them. They all became corrupt and kleptocratic in different ways. kleptocracy means government of thieves, from the ancient Greek. They became kleptocratic in different ways, and they never bothered to gain the buy-in from the people. And so at the end of the day, people just voted with their feet. And I mean, heartbreakingly, in Afghanistan, just a little over a year ago, people voted with their feet to select the Taliban as the lesser of two evils. I mean, just wrap your mind around that for just a minute.
I have to interject here, sir, because you bring that up. I wasn't an Afghan guy. I was an Iraq guy, and I saw it. I had plenty of friends over there. And you'd think after 20 years ago, we were fighting the Taliban to get them out of Afghanistan. 20 years later, we get out of Afghanistan, and it's taken over by the Taliban. And I know there's a lot of military people that listen to this podcast, and I know that, and I'm sorry, but it's got to. We still have to talk about this because it's something that, like you said, it's been a year now, and it blows my mind that it happened that way.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, I felt, we probably felt the same emotions looking at it. I mean, just, the anger, at seeing this all fall down like a house of cards, the disgust that Afghan senior leaders just seem to take the money and run, and while everything's collapsing around them, the frustration that it's like, why do we keep doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results? Why is it that we continue to get into these quagmires? What are we doing wrong? What can we do to reduce the number of unforced errors? And so that's why I wrote the book, is because we need some. This is not okay. 20-year quagmires, 10-year quagmires, 7-year quagmires, not okay. $4 trillion just in the post 9/11 wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. $4 trillion, over 7,000 service members, American service members killed in action, tens of thousands with wounds seen and unseen. Is not okay. And there needs to be some serious national security reform. And that's why I wrote the book, and I made some recommendations of what we can do, some common sense ways to get better.
See, I like that you use the phrase common sense, because it seems like as a society we're lacking a lot of that over the last few years. So I appreciate you saying that, sir. I really do.
Common sense, never so common.
Yeah. It's there's when you're overseas though, and we're talking about these quagmires as you put it. You hear generals and ambassadors say, well, we're making progress, but like you said with Afghanistan, or we use that as an example, did we fail there? And if so, why are we hearing people saying, oh, we're making progress here, or we're making progress there, but yet it seems like the end result is still the same? Yeah,
this is another great example of where military history, business intersect.
Yes.
You know that and it's the problem of bureaucratic silos, organizational silos.
Right.
And you've got a problem with organizational silos when the people in charge of each individual silo are saying how awesome they are and what great progress they're making, but things overall are not getting better. And in case of Afghanistan, Iraq, they're getting worse. So everybody's talking about progress in their own bureaucratic silos, military silo, the political silo, the aid and development silo, the intel silo. Everybody's making great progress, but things are spiraling downhill. It's the same in a business where marketing is saying we're making awesome progress, we're getting more likes, and the salespeople are saying we're making great progress because we're making more connections and bigger sales. The operations people are like, we're making great progress too because we're cranking out more products, and yet the company's losing money.
Right.
When you look at the financial crisis in 2008.
Oh yeah.
It was the same financial silos. And so when you look at our wars, there's nobody in charge of our wars. When you get on the ground, I mean, nobody below the president of the United States.
Right.
So when you get on the ground in theater, you've got the general, and you might have many military flavors that don't always work for the 4-star general or whatever, but they report directly up that military silo to the Secretary of Defense. Then you've got your State Department silo, people who are training, working with the host nation government. They report directly up their state silo to the secretary. You've got your aid and development silo that reports straight up to Washington, D.C.
Right.
And then you've got your different intel flavors, and they've got their silos, and they all point straight to Washington, D.C. There's nobody overall in charge on the ground that is setting priorities, that's making people work together. And so all of the problems are falling through the cracks between the silos. When you look at the Afghanistan meltdown last year, DOD had its own plan. We need speed and security. We're going to get people out as fast as we can. State had their own plan. Have this evacuation go as slow as possible because we don't want to create panic. And then the whole thing,
just
everything fell through the cracks between those two siloed plans.
No communication.
Right. And so when you have nobody in charge who can make decisions, who can set priorities, who can tell people, you are the main effort, you are the supporting efforts, you're not just going to optimize in your own silo, you are going to support the objectives that we've got. Then you're going to, if you don't have that person in charge, you're going to have these silo problems. And that was it was one of the things that's been killing us in these conflicts.
Lack of communication in between silos. In communication, I think those of you that are in business need to know. As a business owner myself, that was one of the key things that I talk about. Anytime I bring on a new employee, it's always, I kind of test them. What's the most important thing that you can get out of this? And I'm hoping that they say communication, and I let them know. When I'm asked, I give them a time that like, what do you want from us? Communication. My phone's always on. You can shoot me a text, whatever. Like, communication is key, because if you have a lack of communication, that's how things start falling through the cracks or in between the silos. So I think communication is huge. Sir, for leaders and business owners that are out there right now, what's the one thing that sabotages? How do they sabotage their organization?
I'd say there's the three ways.
Okay.
The first one is you can't order Amazon, or you can't order buy-in from Amazon. You've got to earn it.
It's not for sale, huh? Okay.
It's not for sale. You've got to earn it. People need to know what they're buying into. You need clarity. People know what they're buying into. People have to see themselves as better off by buying into it.
Right.
And there's got to be accountability. Got to be consequences. So that's number one.
Okay.
Is too many people take buy-in for granted, and when they do so, people vote with their feet out of your company, and it inhibits your ability to grow. The second one is complacency. So complacency is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting the same results.
Right.
Because when you are just simply content with the status quo and your competitors are innovating, then you're going to fall further and further behind. So you've got to be constantly innovating along the 3 Ps: people, products, processes. And you don't necessarily innovate on all 3 of those at once. You don't have to, but you constantly look at how can we get people to contribute their best? Are we putting the right cheeks in the right seats, so to speak, where they are in position where they're using their superpowers. What are the processes that we're using? Can we get them more efficient and more effective? And then what are our what are our customers looking for from us? And how do we get that to them?
Let me interrupt you real quick. When you say customers, are you talking about customers outside of the organization, or do you include, like, I would assume in a leadership position, you have to look at your down channel, or the people that work for you,
right,
also as customers for you as well, correct?
Yeah, I think it's a really important point, because they have to be really proud of what they're doing and what they're a part of. If they're going to contribute their best, they got to be proud of that. Yeah.
So how does a leader come in? Let's say you got a new leader, and I guess I'm kind of throwing my son indirectly under the bus here with this, but you have a new leader that's coming in, taking a leadership position. How do they inspire their troop, their people? How do they motivate them, inspire them, and push them in the right direction, and help them see the bigger picture of the team's success?
Yep. So I'm going to answer that right after I answered the number three.
Okay.
Number three problem, consistent problem, is freebasing your own gunpowder, breathing your own exhaust, believing your own propaganda. That's all freebasing your own gunpowder. And a lot of times leaders they will fall in love with their own plans. They'll fall in love with their own ideas. And they don't have people around them who are going to tell them the truth. They don't have people around them who are going to give them unfettered advice. And their direct reports, are going to be great people, most likely.
Right.
They have a vested interest in either advancing a certain point of view or telling you what you want to hear. So having trusted advisors that help you, give you perspective, help you see the things that you're not seeing, is really important to avoid freebasing your own gunpowder. So that was number three. Now to get to your question about, I think the number one thing that we look for in leaders is that they are worthy of trust. And the best way to show that you're worthy of trust is to be an exemplar. Exemplify, model the values and the behaviors and the standards that you expect of everybody.
Right.
When you go to a Civil War battlefield, for instance, you see leaders on horseback. And do you know what which military rank had the highest casualty rate in the Civil War?
I don't.
Brigadier General. Because they're the ones on horseback. And the reason why they're on horseback is not because they're privileged or because they're lazy. Part of it is because they can see a little bit better. But mostly they're the exemplar. And they're saying, if I can stand my ground and do my job while everybody's shooting at me, I am the most exposed person on the battlefield. I can do my job.
Wow.
Everybody else can stand in the ranks. In ancient war, you had like the hoplites and these phalanxes. The leader was at the right front, not in the back, at the right front. And it's because when you had a shield wall, your shield is in your left hand. You're protecting the person to your left.
Right.
But if you're on the front right, nobody else's shield is protecting you.
Right.
You are the most exposed person. And you do that because you're saying, I'm setting the example. I'm standing my ground. I'm fighting. And if I can do this exposed, you can do it. You can do it as well. You can do it just like me. So being an exemplar is absolutely vital. And then second is be comfortable in your own skin. Be self-aware of both authentic to yourself, know your superpowers. Don't try to be somebody that you're not, and understand how other people perceive you. And it's not that it's a popularity contest, but other people are going to perceive you in certain ways. And that is going to help you understand how to connect with them, how to maybe change things that make perfect sense to you, but aren't quite making sense to the people that you're serving. So those are a couple of ways to gain that credibility right away.
That's great advice, sir. I love that. Folks, again, if you're listening, open up another browser. Open up another browser, go to strategicleadersacademy.com. Let's talk about that for a second, sir.
Mm-hmm.
What you mentioned it briefly in the beginning of the show, that you got out doing the government stuff and you started this. You're working with business leaders. So you work with any business leader, or is there certain people that you're looking for right now? And I'm asking this because I know there's somebody out there that's listening to this right now.
Right.
Is the easiest way to get a hold of you is through the website? How can they if they want to work with you, what can they expect, and how can they get a hold of you?
Yeah, the easiest way is just go on the website. Okay. You can get a hold of me by my email, chris@strategicleadersacademy.com. I work with leaders who want to get better. And I love working with the Aaron Rodgers level leaders, go Pack Go, Aaron Rodgers level leaders, because, the change is small. You're talking about going from, you're talking about a change of maybe like 1% or 0.5%, right. But that's huge. When you're at the top of your game, like Aaron Rodgers, Patrick Mahomes, or whatever, you're not talking about huge changes. You're talking about those subtle changes that help you win. And those are the kind of leaders I love to work with.
Awesome. I love that. So listen, if you guys are out there listening to this right now, and you're one of those, or you want to be a leader, maybe you're a newer leader in your field, go to the website, get a hold of him. You'll be happy that you did. And while you're there, order his books. You can get both of them on his website, Zero Sum Victory, What We're Getting Wrong About War. Highly recommend that, because I can't wait to dig into that one. And I started reading Leadership, the Warrior's Art. And I think if you are like, if you're taking a business class, or this should be on every reading book across every college campus in America right now. This should be mandatory reading. This is great, and I'm going to be getting another one of those and sending that to some newer cadets, I think, this year as well.
Awesome. Yeah, and on our website, you can hit quizzes under resources, hit quizzes, and we have a leader quiz that helps you identify your leadership superpowers. So people are pioneers, reconcilers, operators, or mavericks. So we call them the PROM archetypes. And it's part of the self-awareness where you can, based on how you respond to the questions, it's like, all right, well, this is, you're kind of one of these 4 leaders, and these are probably your, the superpowers, and you want to put yourself in a position where you're using those superpowers every day. I mean, people who are using their natural talents every day are like, I don't know, 1,000 times more productive than people who aren't using their natural talents and just feel like, they're just getting ground off every day. So knowing your leader archetype, knowing your employee's leader archetype will help you put them in positions to succeed, help you put the right cheeks in the right seats.
I love that. I love that. Cheeks in the right seats. Sir, I got another question for you. You're on a show called The Decision Hour, and,
right.
And we make decisions every day. Name a time in your life where the feet were on the line and you had to make that decision. What was it, and what was the atmosphere like for you at the time?
There are a lot of those. especially of course, in Afghanistan in combat. And one of them that comes to mind, and these decisions all had life and death consequences. One of the decisions that comes to mind is we were getting. So here's one: we were getting rocket attacks. Oh, it's getting so annoying. Several times a month. Get these rockets, 107 millimeter rockets. They can shoot shrapnel, across a football field.
Right.
And we'd be getting these from the east side of the Kunar River, one of these deep mountain valleys. And a couple of our guys had gotten wounded from these. I mean, they're notoriously inaccurate, but every once in a while, one's going to hit, right? It's just the law of averages. And I was getting pretty fired up about this. And so gathered the brain trust together and said, all right, this is not acceptable. This is not okay. What do we do about it? Let's figure out what we're going to do about it. And, the standard response would have been, well, let's do a cordon and search, through the valley and then find these rocket caches and, get everybody with gunpowder on their fingerprints and throw them in jail. Okay. What other ideas do we have? And my Afghan Army counterpart, this guy was great, a guy named Shiramad, Lieutenant Colonel. He says, why don't we go talk to him? I don't think anybody's ever talked to him. And I was like, yeah, I like that. There's only one problem. Our vehicles couldn't get across the little narrow bridge. And so we'd have to air assault in. And then, of course, that's going to get it, people all, they're going to think an attack's coming. He's like, no, I can. And this is 2007. The Afghan army wasn't doing anything by itself. And he said, we can do this on our own. My vehicles can fit across the bridge. We'll go up there. We'll talk to them, see what's going on, come back. I was like, all right. I like that. So we put some overhead, air overhead and stuff like that in case things got ugly. And so he goes and he leaves and he comes back at the end of the day. I mean, he's gone 10 hours. And I said, what'd you learn? And he says, yeah, they're the ones shooting rockets at you, or they're letting people shoot rockets at you. I'm like, all right, well, that's good to know. Why? What's eating them? Why are they shooting rockets at us? He said, well, a few years ago, some American special forces and Afghan militia came and did night raids in their village, and they disrespected the elders. They disrespected the women and allegedly stole some jewelry. And so this is retribution. This is retribution. That's why they're shooting rockets at you. Like, all right, well, I guess I can get that. What else did you find out? He said, they want their kids to go to school. And I said, yeah, tell me about that. And he said, yeah, they got like 300 kids, boys and girls, and the girls go in the morning, the boys go in the afternoon. They don't have a school building. They just have this like three walls. There's not even a roof, just three walls. And all the kids, kind of pack in there. There's one little chalkboard. And like they use the right, limestone or whatever stone there was that they would use on the chalkboard. The rest of the kids write their numbers and letters in dirt on a stick. So they really want to school because they see what's happened last, at that point, 20, some odd years right. of, just not being able to get their kids to school. So we'd been collecting school supplies because I think one of the things that brings people together is we all want what's best for our kids. Amen. It doesn't matter what your politics are, what your religion is, what country you're from. We all want what's best for our kids. Yeah. So when people say, what can we send? I said, don't send us candy. Send us notebooks and pens. We could do some good with that. And so they did. And we had like a container full of stuff. And I asked Shiramad, I said, would you be willing to go back there? And he said, oh yeah, they're really nice people. And I said, okay. So he goes back a couple of days later. We load his trucks up with these notebooks and pens. Off he goes. Comes back like 10 hours later. He had the best time. And he said they really appreciated the notebooks and pens. And I thought, maybe we did something to start to build a bridge. Maybe we did something, because you're going to get a lot more progress building bridges than you do digging trenches. And I didn't know what to expect. The next morning, the front gate calls, sir, there's a bunch of elders here to see you. It's like, what? I wasn't expecting anybody. Where are they from? I said, well, they're from this village. I was like, well, yeah, bring them in. So me and one of my troop commanders, Nate Springer and Shiramad were there and greeted them as they came in and introduced ourselves and got to the head elder. And, he hands me this stack of paper. And I said, what's this? He said, these are thank you notes written by our children in the notebooks and pens that you gave them. And he says, there would have been more of them, but most of them didn't think their handwriting was good enough for you. And it's like, your heart like totally melts at that point, and I mean, they were very emotional about it. And so were we. And we sat down and spoke the rest of the day. We, fed them and everything. And eventually worked with a NGO that put a school there that they defended against Taliban attacks. It's still working, running to this day. Never had another rocket attack from that area.
That is, sir, I've been doing this show for quite a few years. Had a lot of guests on, and that there has got to be the coolest decision hour moment we've had on this show. That gave me goosebumps when you were sharing that. Thank you for sharing that, and thank you for your service, sir. And I appreciate your time coming on the decision hour and sharing everything with our listeners today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Is there time to talk about the honor ride?
Yes, there is. I wish you would.
Okay. I appreciate that. And as I mentioned earlier, I was, 6 of our paratroopers are killed in action in Afghanistan. I mentioned their names. And we're coming up on the 15-year anniversary of that deployment. And I thought, I want to do something special to just commemorate their service and sacrifice. So I was like, I'm going to visit their graves. I could drive. They're spread across from Nebraska all the way east to Arlington National Cemetery. About 1,700 miles. And it's like, well, I could drive, but that'd be kind of lame. I could walk the distance. But that's just going to take me way too long. I know what I can do. I can pedal a bike. The only problem is I hadn't ridden a bike in 20 years. I didn't own a bike. Hadn't ridden one in 20 years. So it's like, all right, I'm going to put my money where my mouth is. I'm going to go out and buy a nice road bike. I'm going to hire a cycling coach for the accountability and because I believe in coaching. Yeah. And I'm going to start telling people so I don't chicken out. So the accountability. So this was like 15 months ago. And, now I'm getting ready to start it next, in September of this year. And then, I also decided, we can do some good with this. I mentioned when I was pedaling this morning, training, I was listening to your interview with Betsy Ross. I thought it was just wonderful. I can't wait to read her books. I encourage all of your listeners to listen to that interview. And she talks a lot about what veterans go through, what people go through in their transition out of the military, and this sort of loss of, this purpose and belonging that, we kind of take for granted in the military until it's gone. Yeah. And then it's hard to recover that. And I think this is part of the explanation for why, we had 7,000 Americans killed in the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. Over 30,000 post 9/11 veterans have died by suicide. Within my own unit, we've lost more to death by suicide and substance abuse than we did to killed in action. And part of what happens is happiness goes on a U, according to a bunch of studies. The tops of the U on one side is like age 20, early 20s. Mid 60s on the other is the top of the U. The bottom of the U is age 47.2 to be very specific. And so, 15 years ago, when most of our folks are 18 to sort of 28 years old, they're at the top of the happiness curve. And they've got this tremendous sense of purpose. I'm fighting for my country. I'm defending my country. This extraordinary sense of belonging. Like the person on my left and the person on my right's got my back.
Yep.
And I got their back. And oh, by the way, I've got an entire country supporting me. And then a few years later, you leave that and you sort of lose that sense of purpose. You don't have that sense of belonging. You're out there in the civilian world and you're like, nobody gets me. Nobody's got me. Nobody's got my back. And nobody knows how to help me. And I thought Betsy's interview there just was so spot on this. And so at the same time, you have these families just sliding down the happiness curve. This population, the paratroopers who were with me in 2007 and 8, I mean, they're average age 35 to 45 right now. And for some, that U has been pretty shallow. They're able to find new purpose and belonging right away. Want to help them soar to new heights. For others, that U is a bit more pronounced. And, you have a lot of sort of career pinballing where you don't quite know where you fit. You got broken relationships, your classic sort of midlife crisis. And then you've got people who've gone, that U is pretty steep and they've gone into a dark place. One of our guys who was in a big firefight, he was shot in that firefight. Can't believe he lived. Basically he had a neck wound, shot through the neck. He recovers. He comes back. This guy came back we had a 15-month deployment. He came back for the last 3 months of the deployment. Unbelievable. I mean, just a champ. Yeah. And he gets out and it's just, it's the same story. It's like, nobody gets me. I don't feel like I fit anywhere. I don't know what my natural talents are and how to use them. So bouncing back and forth between jobs and just never finds a fit. And finally just says, screw it. And sits in his apartment and drinks all day. And another guy, one of our top NCOs. I mean, this guy was extraordinary. Everybody knew he was going to be a command sergeant major. I mean, top 1% kind of leader. I mean, just extraordinary. He now lives in a dumpster outside of a city library in Northern California as a meth addict. And I can't know this is happening and not try to do something about it. So that's why we created the Saber 6 Foundation. So it's kind of named for our 6 fallen heroes. It was also our call sign in Afghanistan, Task Force Saber. And so the Saber 6 Foundation is designed to help, our veterans and their families, build their dreams. I mean, if you think your best days are in your rearview mirror and you're like, there's, it's all drudgery in front of me and, I don't feel like my life is worth living. I mean, then you're going to make those dark choices. But if you believe your best days are ahead, that you just love looking through the windshield because you've got something that you want to achieve, it's a whole different ball game. And that's what we want to accomplish. So that's what the Honor Ride, 1,700 mile Fallen Hero Honor Ride is all about. Honoring the dead by visiting their graves and then serving the living, so that they can survive and thrive.
we're going to make sure, sir, that we have all of that information on there. Are you going to be documenting this as you're riding through like social media and stuff? Or will people
So
be able to follow your journey?
Absolutely. Yes. So I've got a Facebook page, Fallen Hero on a Ride. You just look up Fallen Hero on a Ride. Boom. That's our Facebook page. You can go to honorride.us website, and it'll get you to our foundation. So that's honorride.us, not .com, or saber6foundation.com. And yeah, you can follow the ride. There are various ways to support us. And we're going to start on September 25th, which is the 25th or the 15th anniversary of when Chris Pfeiffer died of wounds. So we're going to start at his gravesite in Spalding, Nebraska. And, his parents, Mike and Dar, will be there. His widow, Karen, will be there, and his daughter, Peyton, who was born 2 days after Chris died of wounds. So she'll be there too. Never met her dad. And, we're going to start right there on that date, and then end up on Arlington National Cemetery on October 22nd.
I'm writing this down because I'd like to greet you and meet you as you're riding in on October 22nd down
awesome.
there in Arlington. So I'm going to hold myself accountable right now, and I'm putting this out literally to the world right now that on October 22nd, sir, I'll be meeting you and shaking.
Yeah, we'll ride in together. That'd be awesome.
So, sir, again, thank you for your time, folks. We'll make sure we have all of this information. It'll be on the show notes that you'll see in the show description underneath. Sir, that's all the time that we have right now. Thank you again. Appreciate you. And
I appreciate you and what you're doing for veterans, for what you're doing for all of us to, help people transition effectively, help people get better.
Well, thank you, sir. It truly is an honor, and I will be seeing you on October 22nd.
All right, I'm counting on it.
Folks, that's all the time that we have. Before we let you go, make sure you check out our parent network, Heroes Media Group. Simply go to heroesmediagroup.com. Check out all the shows, events, and articles that are going on there. If you're looking to become part of the Heroes Media Group network, send us an email, info@heroesmediagroup, and someone will reach out to you. Until next time, you've been listening to The Decision Hour.